Welcome back, everybody, to part 5 of our Balloon Rider Unity tutorial series. So far, we've set up our player with movement, hazards to avoid, and a game manager to oversee operations. Now it's time to move the camera when the player takes off from the starting platform and animating our night sky and water texture with parallax scrolling for added effect. If you've joined us here, don't worry, you can download this project in the description below and follow along at home. And when everyone is ready, let's crack on. Before we dive into the scripts, for we will be using 3 of them, our game manager, our camera controller, and our sprite scroll scripts, let's talk briefly about how they're going to work together. When the player takes off from the platform, that will trigger a bool in the game manager, which we will call takeoff as true. When takeoff is true, our camera knows it's time to start moving, and our sky and water texture know it's time to start scrolling. When we get game over, of course, we want to stop the scrolling, stop the camera movement, and much like we did with the player, reset the camera's position so we can restart from the beginning once again. So let's go ahead and open up our game manager script. First things first, exactly like we did with the player controller and the player position, we'll do the same for the camera. So create a public camera controller, camcon, and a vector free the cam start position, just like so. Also, don't forget, we also want that bool. So let's have a public bool and we'll call it takeoff. There we go. Then in the start function, exactly like we did with the player start position, we'll add our cam start position equals the camcon.transport.position. So it's position at the very start of the game. And just to make sure, let's have our takeoff bool as false, just so we don't get the game starting without us. Because ultimately, when we've taken off, the game has started, and this is where we'll call our start game function, and we'll do that in the update with a very simple if takeoff is true, then game start. For now, we can leave game start empty. We will add more things in there later. But in game over, we want to stop the camera movement and stop the textures from scrolling. Therefore, takeoff equals false. There we go. And when the game over screen appears, we have the option to reset. So again, exactly like we did with the player, let's reset the camcon.transform.position equal to the cam start position. Okay, that's all we need in the game manager for now. Let's hit save. And now let's open up the camera controller script. Like we mentioned in the beginning, once the game manager's takeoff bool is true, then the camera knows, right, it's time to get moving. And all we're going to need are 2 simple variables, a public float cam speed, we'll give it a value of 3, and of course we want it to communicate with the game manager, so we'll have the public game manager, the GM. Let's keep this nice and simple, and in the update, let's add an if statement that says if the GM.takeoff equals true, then the camera can start moving by its transform.translate inside the brackets a direction, our vector2.right, multiplied by the cam speed multiplied by time.delta time. And that's all we need to get our camera moving. So hit save. And now let's head into the sprite scroll script. Similar to how we started in the camera controller, we're going to start with a public float for a scroll speed. And of course, we want to access the game manager, so have public game manager, the GM. We also want to get the renderer component from this material because the renderer is going to offset it towards a direction and give off the impression that it's infinitely looping like a conveyor belt, essentially. So in the start method, let's get that component. So our text renderer equals get component renderer, just like so. Then finally, in the update, just like we did with the camera, let's use that same if statement. If the gm.takeoff equals true, then the renderer can work its magic. So the text renderer.material dot main texture offset. We want to move it from right to left, so we'll put plus equals a new vector 2. Then on the x-axis, we want that to be our scroll speed multiplied by time.delta time. We don't want to move it or affect it on the y-axis, so we'll leave that as 0. And there we go. That's all we need. So hit save and let's head into our final script that's going to trigger that ball takeoff the player controller script. In the player controller script, first let's make a slight adjustment to the game manager. So in our private void awake, where we have the GM equals get component game manager, let's change that to find object of type game manager so we can access it at all times. Then let's scroll down to beneath our on trigger enter 2D and collision checker, and let's add a void on collision exit 2D, collision 2D other. So once we are no longer colliding with an object, this will trigger, and that object we want to no longer collide with is the start platform, which we've given the tag start platform. So do make sure that has been applied when we head back into Unity shortly. So once we've left that start platform, if the other.gameObject.tag equals start platform, then of course the gm.takeoff equals true, and the game should start as intended. So let's hit save. Let's head back into Unity. And once everything is ready, let's go ahead and set this all up by adding our camera controller script to the camera. Let's have a look at the camera there. Yep, we have our cam speed and it's asking for the GM. Pop the GM in there like so. Let's have a look at the GM. It's now asking for the camera and we have our takeoff ball. Excellent. Add the camera in there. Let's open up the camera object and have a look at our water and sky texture. And let's add the sprite scroll script to both of those. I want the water to move at a speed of 0.1. And don't forget to assign the game manager as so. And the sky, I want to move a little bit slower, maybe half the speed. So I'll do 0.05 for the sky. And let's just double check that starting platform has the tag. Yes, it does. All good. And now we should be ready to go. So go ahead, hit save and test. And now, once we take off, everything starts moving. So our camera's moving and our textures, our background and the water are moving, giving us a nice impression that we're traveling and flying at speed. Let's double check. Yep, there he is. He's going to follow us no matter where we are. Let's test out the reset. So come on, there we go. Reset, and there we go. The camera's reset along with the player, ready to take off and restart. Excellent. Go ahead and experiment with values here. Maybe you want a faster camera speed, faster scroll speed, or even a faster fish to make your game more difficult. Make the project your own and add your own flair to it where you feel necessary. In the next video, now that everything's moving, let's look at how we're going to spawn more hazards using object pooling. As always, I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you all very much for your continued support, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.